Welcome everybody to the Hoop Psychology Podcast, a show for the everyday hooper where we discuss different hoop related topics and build community. As a former college player and coach, my goal for this platform is to help as many hoopers as I can, both young and old. Our motto here at Hoop Psychology is skill is earned, and that skill set starts with your mindset. This podcast is powered by Hooperlosophy, and my name is Rome, and I am grateful and thankful to be here today with you guys. I wanted to kick off this episode by briefly, well, I'm going to try to be brief, by discussing my history as a hooper and what ultimately got me to this seat. I started playing basketball when I was 9, and that all came about due to an unfortunate event. That was probably one of my many life events. Usually, you have a life event that's like a pivoting point, and it kind of changes the trajectory of your life. This particular event, unfortunately, was the passing of my father. My father was a huge soccer fan, and it essentially broke my heart to keep playing the sport after he was gone. So I decided to. Well, it wasn't even a decision, actually. Basketball found me. Um, when we moved to New Jersey, um, my mom and my sisters and I, when we moved to New Jersey after my father's passing, um, that wasn't really. It was a solemn time. I'll say that. And my mindset at 8 years old, turning 9, was to try to continue being the best student that I could be, and ensure that my mother's stress level was minimal because she had experienced a lot. I don't know how I came to that level of understanding at 8, but I'm just being transparent and just letting you guys know um, what was going on in my head. So my two cousins, they played uh, basketball. They were, avid hoopers, hoop junkies at the time, and I wanted to be like them. So they'd be in the backyard. They had a hoop in their backyard, and all their friends would come over, and they'd be back there messing around. And that was like my first introduction to the sport. Um, Needless to say, I wasn't any good at it, but I fell in love with it instantly. You know, so when the school year started, they were stars on their respective basketball teams. My older cousin, he played on the varsity team, which was the seventh and eighth grade team, and my younger cousin, he played on the JV and varsity team, and he started for both teams, which was the fourth, fifth, and sixth grade team. That was the JV team, and the seventh and eighth grade team. So we went to a small Catholic school, Immaculate Conception. Shout out to Immaculate Conception. So um, I remember, trying out for the team, and when we would practice, our coaches mostly emphasized the importance of the fundamentals. So that was like my first introduction from learning how to dribble with one hand, not making sure my palm wasn't, caressing the ball and I'm not slapping at it, and then shooting a layup. Our gym was a small gym, and that was also, it was like a multi-purpose, room, just like a cafeteria and the gym all combined in one. So it was tile flooring. The backboards had no squares, so we kind of had to learn to shoot, you know, layups on different angles. So that was one of my first memories, of being in practice and learning about the game. I actually remember our very first game. Our very first game was against St. Anthony's, and anybody who's from the North Jersey area is familiar with St. Anthony's. St. Anthony's have been a powerhouse for decades. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think they're in operation anymore. But St. Anthony's, man, they definitely ran the state for a while from the Catholic school basketball perspective. So I remember the score vividly. The final score was 38 to nothing. It was 38 to nothing. Um, Coach put me in the game. We were getting blown out, obviously. If you know anything about elementary school leagues, 38 points, you might as well say they scored 100 to nothing. So hard to score back then. And he put me in the game. And I remember the point guard coming down with the ball. He comes down with the ball, and I steal the ball. So I'm dribbling as fast as I can down court. And I kid you not, this might have been my first experience with flow, because it seemed like time stood still. Everything was like in slow motion, and my imagination being what it was at the time, you would have thought that I was gonna take off and dunk the ball. That's how it felt. Just creating a picture for you, just my bird's eye view, right? So I go up for this layup, and I get fouled, and I miss. But nonetheless, the foul wasn't called. But just the fact that I was able to get a shot attempt, mind you, we lost 38 to nothing. But the fact that I was able to get a shot attempt up against this team who prided themselves on defense was a huge accomplishment for somebody who never played basketball before or organized ball before up until that very moment. And that was just a moment where it clicked. Like, okay, well, I think I'm going to want to do this for a while. Yeah, so after that game, I fell in love with the sport. Played every day. And if I wasn't playing, I was watching the game. So we get to middle school now. Um, my mom transfers us out of the Catholic school, so we go to a public school. Shout out to Alexander Hamilton Middle. Alexander Hamilton Middle was a great experience for me because not only did it expose me to different communities and cultures of people, because we came from like a small school, so the school was much bigger. It was more students from all different ethnic backgrounds and demographics. So it exposed me to a whole new culture, and just how serious they took sports, right? Our practices, it would be 30 kids, 30 plus kids, and I think it was by design that my basketball coach, he had it, that way just to keep us out of trouble, right? Because it wasn't in the best area, our school, but like only 15 kids would travel. But anybody who wanted to come and be a part of the program, he just had like an open door policy. I remember finally being good enough to travel with the team. I think I might have been in 7th grade, and he gave me a jersey, and I'll never forget my first jersey number in middle school. It was so nasty, bro. It was number 61, and it didn't even have like the name of the school in the front. It was just like one of those reversible black and white pennies, because our school colors was black and white. It was a reversible black and white penny with the number 61 on it. Man, it was hilarious. But anyway, I started to kind of fall in love with the process of getting better. So a huge shout out to Mr. McNair. So he essentially left. He stopped coaching, and we got a new coach my 8th grade year, Coach Winfield. Shout out to Coach Winfield. And Coach Winfield taught us the importance of skill work. I remember when our first practices, he would put us through drills, like all these drills, full court handling, ball handling drills, dribbling through the legs, behind the back, doing spin moves, crossovers, all that good stuff. And he would always tell stories about a player that he coached that was in the NBA. His name was John Celestin. Anybody who's familiar with John Celestin, shout out to y'all. But he was one of the 5,000, and I'm going to emphasize 5,000. Only 5,000 people played in the NBA, but he was one of the few. So he was top 1% out of millions of people that hooped in the world, okay? So let's just keep it at that. There's a lot of slander going around on the internet about how players ass and this, and that, but if you make it to NBA, you defied all the odds, and kudos to you. But I'll get back to my point. he would always talk about John Celestin and how John Celestin just was a maniac about working on his game and getting better, and how he would always just be outside, rain, sleet, snow. I grew up in North Jersey, so the seasons were harsh. Let's just put it like that. But the kid, well, the man was always out there working on his game. A kid at the time, but then he became a man, and then he's in the NBA. He was in the NBA. He played in the NBA. So I was inspired, by the stories he would tell, and I could just tell that he was a knowledgeable coach because of how he coached us and the excellence that he demanded, the attention to detail that he put towards the game. And long story short, we ended up going undefeated. I don't know if there's been a team that's done it since us, but we were the first undefeated city champs, and I got a championship jacket to prove it. So that was a great time, man. Eighth grade was great, but I was preparing for high school. So going into high school, I spent one quarter in Elizabeth, and my mom decides to move us to Roselle, New Jersey. Shout out to Roselle. And I remember when I first moved to town, it was much similar in setting to my private school, being the fact that the population was smaller. So get to school, I remember going to going to the gym. At the time, it was football season. Going to the gym, just seeing the varsity team getting ready for preseason, and then going to one of the football games. A lot of the basketball players, they played football as well. So that was the first time like I was really introduced to high school or football as a whole. So fast forward, tryouts is always the day after Thanksgiving. So I remember going to tryouts and essentially making the team. And shout out to our coach, Coach Shaw. He was like this huge dude who was very, very outspoken and outgoing. And he was the one that instilled an attitude in his players. And by what I mean by that, like he was very militant in the sense of he ensured that we were all one team, right? There weren't any individuals on our team. And to prove it, he made us all dress alike. You know, we had to wear our socks the same. We had to wear our shorts the same. We had to wear our wristbands the same. And, if you violated those rules, you just wouldn't play. The coolest thing about Coach Shaw was the fact that he gave us all nicknames, and he gave us all nicknames, and we had these shooting shirts with our nicknames on them. By then, my number was not 61. I was wearing number 15, and my nickname was Shooter. And if anybody knows Coach Shaw, he's the biggest clown, just likes to crack jokes and have a good time. So Shooter, the nickname wasn't because I could shoot, because I couldn't shoot for shit back then. Ironically, it's crazy how I was able to flip that, but I'll get back to it. So freshman year was like my first introduction to high school basketball and what it meant to have pride in your school. Shout out to the Rams, man. Shout out to the Roselle Rams. And good times. So freshman year happened. I didn't play much freshman year. I would probably get in, blowout games. We had a decent season. And then that summer, that actually my freshman year, our JV team won the county tournament. And if anybody's familiar with North Jersey Hoops, the Union County tournament, that's probably one of the most competitive counties in the state. Some of the top ranked schools in the state were housed in Union County. So our JV team won the Union County tournament. So I was really looking forward to playing JV. So our JV team wins the county tournament, and if anybody knows anything about Union County basketball. That's some of the toughest basketball in the state. All of the most, the majority of the top teams that compete for state championships either come from Union or Essex County. Um, I'm not being biased, it's just facts. But anyway, I digress. So my freshman year, the JV team wins the Union County championship, and I'm excited to play JV because I like to win, right? Came from a middle school championship, and I kind of had that same goal for high school. So my JV year comes. I'm a sophomore now. I've gotten a little bit better, but I just wanted to see where I stacked up with everybody else. So we have tryouts. I make the team, and looking back on it, I feel like I made the team on a technicality for two reasons. One, our varsity team was stacked. They were heavy favorites to win the Group 2 state championship that year, like heavy favorites. We had a preseason All-American guard and Jesse Holly. We had a stacked team. We had nice guards, Mike Fryer, Amir Singleton, Jamil Hurley was one of the forwards. Jason Dominique, man, that team was stacked, and that was some of the best basketball that I witnessed, to be honest. And we were just in high school. Shout out to the Twins. Oh man, fun times. But let me get back on topic. So since the team was stacked, a lot of the juniors that tried out for varsity that didn't make the team from, but they played as sophomores, they came back for a second season on JV, which means that us freshmen that were going to be sophomores, um, you know, there was only a select few that ended up making the team. Uh, I say that I made the team on a technicality because the starting point guard on our freshman team made final cuts. So it was like maybe like we made final cuts, but then he ended up not making the team because he got ineligible. So that leaves me. So I make it on a technicality. Maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit, but that's kind of how I felt. But anyway, shout out to our JV coach. He ended up being the varsity coach after I left. He retired now. Shout out to Coach Smith. Coach Smith taught me the importance of working hard and giving each play 100%. He was a fair coach. He was a just coach. He just wanted effort. So he taught me the importance of effort. He taught me that effort is a skill. So by the end of sophomore year, I was so conditioned as an athlete and as a basketball player that I would run literally everywhere. Like I would run from my house to the park, play 5 to 10 games, and then run back from the park to my house. If I was dating a girl at the time and I wanted to get to her house quickly, obviously it was back then. There was no Uber, no nothing. We couldn't even afford a bike. Well, I couldn't afford a bicycle, so I would run to her house. So it was literally that serious. But shout out to Coach Smith. JV season, I didn't play much. No, I played in some games. I started a couple games. Um, that was probably when I got my first high school buckets. Um, that was a couple games that my mom attended. Shout out to my mom. Rest in peace. I miss you. She worked a lot when I was in school, so she couldn't really make any of my games. So I just remember her being at this particular one. We played Morristown Beard, and we ended up winning the game. I played a lot of minutes, and I might have ended up with like 9 or 10 points. So that was definitely a cool experience. Um, but anyway, we go into junior year, and as I mentioned before, our team was a state championship contender, and they had a great season. They only lost 3 games or 2 games, and the 2 games were in the tournaments, the state final and the county, I think, semifinal. So it was really that serious. So I know a lot of the seniors, the juniors, then seniors, had a lot to prove. I think the team returned maybe 10 seniors, and so there were only 5 slots for us um, juniors that were incoming juniors, and I was one of the 5. So I made the team, and and it was a magical season. I guess a redemption season to say the least. So we ended up, grinding it out and winning the state championship my junior year. That was a great experience. And one important note about that season, I remember we were going into the sectional championship game. And I bring this story up because one of the best players on that team ended up being my college teammate. Shout out to Jay. So every time he sees my championship ring, like, he's hurt because he's like, "Oh man, y'all took my ring from me." But I remember we were getting ready for the game, and my coach is like, "Oh, we're playing Englewood." And so we look at each other like, "Englewood? Like, what the hell is that? Who the hell is that? Is that a whole bunch of, you know like, we didn't even know what we were facing, right?" Just to kind of paint the picture for you, this was before like the internet like really became what it is today. So if your name wasn't in the paper, the Star Ledger, or you weren't in a 5 to 10 mile radius of us, we didn't even know you existed. Okay, so Englewood is like North Jersey, borderline New York, right? And them boys, they had some hoopers. I remember us walking into this gym, and the gym, just to give you, let's give you the paint the picture. The gym had like a part above the bleachers that was standing room only, and the bleachers were packed, and the lights, they weren't even white; they were like amber. It was like amber lights in the gym, and we walk in, and we look down the court, and that was probably the first time I seen a 7 footer. I'm like, oh shit, like we playing the damn Monstars. This shit is crazy. They had a 7 footer, they had a 6'8", they had a 6'7". Just to give you, Javon, who ended up being my college teammate, he was the shooting guard, and he was 6'3". Okay, and their point guard was 6'3". So they had like, D1 size. Like, pause. Wow, D1 size, Division 1. Height and athleticism. So it's a battle, man. We going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. At one point, we're down. We come back, and we win the game to go to the state championship. And that was probably one of the craziest games that I was a part of. Um, and we go to the state championship, and we win the state championship. Quite frankly, that should have been the state final, us against Englewood, because I don't even remember who we played in the state final. That's how crazy that game was. So we win the states and go into the summer. I'm one of the 5 seniors returning. So I'm thinking to myself, this is about to be my year. Like, we going back to the chip, or we going back to states, one or the other. So I set that goal, and I went to work because that was the only thing I knew how to do. So we fast forward to tryouts. The team, the previous years, Letterman, they didn't have to try out, obviously, but you were required because it was considered basketball practice, so you had to be there. And I remember as soon as I walked in the gym, my coach was on my ass, and it wasn't in a good way. It was like borderline, like bullying. Now that I think, I'm like, yo, you on my back, like you don't like me or something. And that was when I was first introduced to the politics of basketball. I mean this as no disrespect to anybody, that was on the team my senior year, especially the point guards. You already knew what time it was. But, I've grown and I've healed since then. And sometimes when I think back on it, I wish I handled it differently. Even though a lot of the things that happened were beyond my control. Like, I remember one particular game, our starting point guard was turning it over like a hot potato. And I get put in the game, we're down 8. By the time I sit down, we're up 10. I don't play the rest of the game and we lose. The reason why that's such a significant memory for me is because that was the cutoff game in high school basketball. Well, specifically in our area at the time, there was a specific date where your team had to be at least 500 or above to qualify for the state tournament. And that was a cutoff game. We were playing North Plainfield. And that's when I realized that it had nothing to do with my ability as a basketball player. And that broke my heart. So fast forward, the season ends, and all of a sudden, my coach, he's like super nice to me. Oh, what school are you going to? And me being, the stubborn, arrogant kid that I was, not arrogant in the sense of me thinking I'm the shit, but I was just arrogant, like, nah, like, you cross me, I don't fuck with you. I was like, I'm going to such and such school, whatever. So he's like, I'll make some calls or whatever. I finally caved and told him I was going to Bloomfield College. He's like, I'll make some calls. I know the coach. I'll call him. I was like, yeah, whatever. Full of shit. Whatever. So when I decided that I was going to go to Bloomfield, obviously I didn't have any stats to back up my ability as a basketball player. No real video. And that was the argument that I had with my coach my senior year. I'm like, hey, I'm a senior. I'm trying to play college ball. You pride yourself on getting your players to college. I just want to be able to do that. Like, I don't want to have to pay out of pocket if I don't have to, you know? Um, and he thought I was, challenging him or being an asshole, but I was dead serious. Maybe my delivery, maybe he took it as me being audacious, like, hey, how dare this kid come in here, request a meeting with me and talk to me in a calm voice. But I was just really determined on a goal. So, long story short, uh, he ends up making a call. He calls my college coach and he kind of gives him, a rundown about the type of player that I am. But I went into that summer as if he didn't make the call as far as my preparation. And I talk preparation because as an older hooper now, I'll be 40 next year, Lord willing. Um, it took me almost a decade to really figure out how to get better. Before, I was just spending hours in the gym, being a gym rat, thinking that would translate. And looking back on it now, eh, some parts, but not all parts. I could have gotten, is gotten even a word? I could have been astronomically better had I learned how to work instead of just working hard. Because, working hard is a prerequisite. So I get to school. My mom and my uncle, they drop me off at the dorm. I have my basketball in my hand. I hop out the car. Mind you, before I even went to campus, I already looked up the basketball team on the internet. I looked them all up. I sized up who I'd be going against. And I just had like this hunger about it. Like, all right, I'm going to go see where I stack up, and whatever happens, happens. So that was just essentially the attitude that I was coming in there with. I saw it as a clean slate. I saw it as nobody knows me, so I can be whoever I want to be. So, get to campus, the basketball team was um, helping the freshmen move in. I saw the coach, I beeline straight for him. So I said, hey, I pretended like I didn't know who he was. I said, hey, excuse me, sir, do you know where the basketball coach is? Um, so he looks at me, he sizes me up, and he sees I have basketball in my hand. He's like, what you know about that? I said, I think I know enough. So then he goes, oh, I'm the basketball coach. He goes, what's your name? So I tell him my name, and then he goes, oh, yeah, Stan called about you. So I was like, oh, shit. He did me a solid after all. Okay, cool. Appreciate you, Stan. So he's like, well, we have open runs, 4 p.m. You know, when you're done doing what you got to do, just show up to the gym. So I said, today? He's like, yep. I said, all right, I'll see you there. So at the time, from what I understand, was our starting point guard, who was an All-American at the time. He had like broken his wrist, and there was like they didn't know whether or not he was gonna play, that season. So I didn't know none of this. I just showed up to the gym. I played well enough to where he was like, okay, individuals workouts start next week. Mind you, I have no idea what he's talking about. And a part of me is like, oh shit, I made a college team. I made an NCAA college team. Little old me, who didn't play AAU, who sat the bench since middle school, is on a college roster. Shout out to the work. Individual workouts come. Our assistant, Dave, rest in peace, Dave. Appreciate you, bro. He puts out all these cones, and up until then, I have never done a cone drill in my life. Like, I learned how to play by just playing. I didn't know nothing about footwork and making sure my foot was planted, like the minimal details, like the minor details that'll separate you from getting the shot off versus getting it blocked. The proper footwork coming off a curl. Shooting having a proper foot placement for a 2-dribble pull up. I knew none of this stuff. Like I was like Bambi out there, bro, just learning how to walk again. And then on top of that, I have to learn this shit quick because I want to play. Needless to say, that part of it made me realize how far behind that I was as a basketball player. But it didn't stop my drive. It just helped me see where I needed to improve. Our star point guard ends up coming back. The man literally played that entire season. I think his wrist was probably still somewhat broken. He literally played with 5 fingers on his right hand. Or that might have been his left hand. I don't remember which hand it was. And I had the pleasure of guarding that little motherfucker every day. fun. My mindset throughout that process was different. And in hindsight, and I say this to my buddies all the time when I talk about my experience in college, even though it wasn't the greatest, um, my mindset is essentially what did me in. I went in there wanting to learn. Oh, let me learn. I'm gonna play behind these guys. My time gonna come. Not realizing that it's a business. College hoops is a business. You're on a 1 year contract every year, especially on the D2 level. Well, now with the NIL and the portal, it's the wild wild west. It's spooky, scary hours. But back then, I didn't know. I understood the political side, but now this is the business side of basketball. I'm thinking that I'm on the team. I'm locked in for 4 years. Naive, old, stupid me. End of the season, I go into my coach's office and I'm like, hey, coach, what are some things, just anything a player like that's serious about improving his game would ask his coach, right? What are some things that I can do to get better? He said, I kid you not, that was his response. Man, you got to get 10 times better. I'm not even sure if there's a spot for you on the team next year with the recruits I got coming. Man, my heart broke into 10 different pieces. I think I went back to my dorm room and cried. Not gonna lie to you. Starting two guard on the team. He was a junior at the time. Shout out to Danny. Appreciate you, bruh. Shout out to Norm. Appreciate you, bruh. My OGs, my teammates that helped me become the player that I became. Appreciate you, bros. Appreciate y'all for real. Danny said, yo, I'm staying here for the summer. I'm in the gym every day. 500 makes, and then we lifting. And then we running. Danny was a worker, bro. And he was a man. Danny was a worker. Gym rat, that's an understatement. So I locked in with Danny. I didn't have a car at the time. I had went back home for the summer. I was taking a bus from my house, 3-hour ride to Bloomfield. I don't understand how to ride from Roselle to Bloomfield so long via bus, but whatever. I hope they improve that. But had I known better, I would have took the train. Anyway, getting 500 makes with Danny. Then we lifting afterwards. Then we doing plyos and we doing all of that. So my sophomore year, I came back feeling myself, boy. Woo. That's probably when I cemented myself as a shooter. Fucking around with Danny. Iron sharpens iron, I guess. Because he was one of the better shooters in our conference. And I guess his energy rubbed off on me because till this day, because of what I obtained that summer, I became a proficient shooter. Proficient in the sense of all my real shooters know this, like, when the ball leaves your hand, whether it's going in or not. You're not just praying. It's to the point where, like, I could probably shoot a three-pointer with my eyes closed if I'm in rhythm. And because of muscle memory, I could make the shot. So I came back that summer. I came back to school. I was locked in. We had won the conference championship my freshman year, and we made the NCAA tournament, the D2 tournament. That was a great experience. And my sophomore year, we repeated. But, my coach, his mind was already made up about who I was as a player. And if anybody is familiar, who's familiar with my coach at the time, Yeah, he was one of them. Very very similar to my high school coach. The ego is more important than what it is. Shout out to him though. He taught me a very valuable life lesson. One that I still carry to this day. So I guess it served its purpose. But I'll admit I was tight for a while. So I go from playing my first 2 years of college on stacked teams, and that seems to be the trend. Like I'm competing with the better players, right? And then I come back to, I wouldn't say mediocrity, but that team, my junior year, that team that was out there, I definitely could have contributed to that team, most definitely. But I ended up getting cut. I ended up getting cut, and ironically, the team that started the season didn't finish the season because half those dudes weren't eligible. But I stayed on as a manager. I sucked it up. I stayed on as a manager because I wanted to be around the guys. Because we were so short, I was still able to practice and compete. But then that's when I got my first introduction to coaching. Because I was the manager of the team, um, I was approached by the women's coach, and he was like, "Hey, I want to start exposing our girls to better competition, and I want you to start coming to our practices and helping me out." So I said, "All right, bet." And it was a way for me to work on my game anyway. So I started going to the women's practices, and I would be like a pseudo, like a student assistant slash practice player for the girls. I would play against them. We would talk shit. We would have a good time, and I would work on my game at the same time. And it made me realize how fun coaching could potentially be. So I did that probably my last 2 years um, in school, and then my fifth year I was commuting and working, so I didn't see or touch a basketball. Life got distracting. You know, Probably didn't play ball again until from like 22 to maybe 26, 25, 26. Um, but then I got an opportunity to come back as an assistant coach for the women's team, and that was a great experience because that experience exposed me to the importance of watching film, breaking film down, understanding player tendencies, coming up with game plans, scouting reports, things of that nature. Things that you take for granted as an athlete, the details. Honestly, that's what really separates you from being good and being great. You hear a lot of interviews from the top players, and that's what they say really. Like that's the determining factor right there. The details. So yeah, that experience taught me that. So then fast forward, um, I get married, I move to a different state, and my hoop career is strictly rec leagues and pickup. I got a couple of rec league chips too. So I joke around. I'm like, man, I got banners in every gym, or I was a part of a banner in every gym. Got conference championships, high school championship, middle school championship. I didn't win nothing in elementary school because we were sorry. We were sad. A couple intramural championships in college after I stopped playing on the team. We won a couple intramural championships. And then um, I won a league championship in Maryland, two league championships in Maryland. And now we're in South Florida, and I'm looking forward to getting my first chip down here. But as I close this essentially started off as a way to just talk hoop, because when it comes to hoop, I truly believe that I'm a higher level thinker, so that it's frustrating to have hoop conversations with people that have biases when it comes to basketball. I get it. I'm a fan too. I'm a fan of the game as well, right? So I'm going to have my biases, but whenever we're debating a game, I try not to, you know, be biased. But as I started conceptualizing this idea, I realized that it's deeper than that. I want to be a resource because, as I mentioned earlier, millions of people play basketball from ages 6 to 60. Millions. Hundreds of millions, actually. Look it up. Only 5,000 players played in the NBA. So what happens to the rest of us that love the game just as much, if not more than them? The ones that pay to play. The ones that work a shift at the job that they don't like, but they in the group chat talking shit to their homeboys, taking out their work frustrations on them on the court. The former pros that are averaging 60, 70 in rec leagues. The youngins that didn't get a chance to play high school, that are playing in rec leagues now and are developing their games, are developing their identities as a hooper. What happens to us? So that's why I started this podcast, to be the voice for us. So I'm looking forward to this journey. I'm looking forward to this process. And I'm looking forward to see how it develops. So I'm getting off my soapbox now. I appreciate you listening. Please like, comment, subscribe. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.